Hi! Welcome to Easy Exposure. The tutorial is about photography. In this lesson we'll be talking about very important aspect of photography, which is light metering. And understanding light metering will help you to take a better exposure. So let's get started. As you can see on the picture, there is two types of light. One of them is incident light. It's the light which is falling on the subject. And the other one is reflected light. So this is the light which is reflected off the subject. As there are two types of light, there are also two types of meter reading. So one of them is incident meter reading and the other one is reflective meter reading. Let's take a look at incident metering first. Of course, incident meter reading reads the intensity of light which is falling on the subject, so incident light. It doesn't really matter what reflectance, background color, brightness or subject texture are. And this type of reading provides reading what will create more accurate and consistent subject tonality, color and contrast in the image. For incident metering, you will be using the handheld meter like this. You will have to put it next to the subject, pointing towards the light with a dome, and then you take your reading. But about the light meter like this and incident metering, we will talk in more details in my other videos. Reflected metering reads the intensity of light which is reflected off the subject. But it can be fooled by differences in color, contrast, tonality, background brightness, surface texture, or even shape of the subject. So this meter reading is not as accurate as incident meter reading. And sometimes what you see is not exactly what you get. And this is usually the meter reading most of us use because we can do it with in-camera meter, the meter which is built into the camera. Or also we can use handheld meter which has a spot meter in it. This is the type of metering we will be talking about today, because most of us meter in the camera. Not a lot of people have a handheld meter, and not in a lot of situations we are able to use handheld meter. So I will do another video specifically on incident meter reading, but now we're going to talk about the reflected metering. When you look through the viewfinder in your camera, you will see your light meter underneath with a 0 in the middle, plus on your left and minus on your right. Let's get a close-up of it. If your meter is in the middle, like it's shown on this picture, it means that your exposure is good. If your meter leaning towards right, towards the minus, it means that your image might be underexposed. As you can see, meter is metering in 1/3 of the stop increments. So in this picture you can see that meter is showing that your picture will be 1/3 of the stop underexposed. Here we have 2/3 of the stop underexposed, 1 stop underexposed, and so on. Underexposed means that there is not enough light getting into the camera and your picture will be too dark. I hope you remember from my other lessons that if you want to add more light and make your picture lighter, you will have to open up your aperture, which is smaller f-stop, use slower shutter speed, use higher ISO, or add artificial light, for example like flash. Try looking through the viewfinder at your meter and changing those settings at the same time, and you will see your meter will be moving. So try to get it to be in 0. And if your meter is leaning towards the plus, it means that your picture will be overexposed. So here we have that your picture will be 1/3 of the stop overexposed, here 2/3 of the stop overexposed, here 1 stop overexposed, and so on. Overexposed means that there is too much light and your picture will be too light. In this case, you will need to close your aperture, which is bigger f number, use faster shutter speed, or use lower ISO. Or you can also use natural density filter, and I will talk about those in some of my lessons. So how camera meter actually works? Every meter in the camera is trying to adjust exposure for average middle gray, which is 18% gray. But why gray? Well, the camera can't see the colors. All it can see is reflected light in the shades of gray. The 18% gray is in the middle. That's why there is a term, we can call it also middle gray. All built-in camera meters work in this way. 2 stops underexposed from middle gray is close to but not quite a pure black, and 2 stops overexposed from the middle gray is close to but not quite pure white. The test I will show you right now you can also do by yourself. You will need 18% gray card, which you can buy in your local camera store. You will also need white piece of paper or cardboard and a black piece of paper or black cardboard. You will have to put them next to each other like I did in this picture, with middle gray in the middle, black on your left and white on your right. In this case, I was metering the entire image, so I got truthful tonalities and colors. I got middle gray in the middle, black on the left and white on the right. But let's try to meter them separately and take separate pictures. So first I metered the gray card, and as you can see, I got the gray color picture. Then I metered the black card, and you can see there is a difference in exposure. There is 2 stops different in exposure, and as you can see, my black card for some reason turned out gray, because the camera meter is calibrating everything to middle gray. So when the camera meter sees the black card, which is reflecting the light, it thinks, oh, this is too dark, let me make it lighter. And when it makes it lighter, it turns into middle gray. Then I metered the white card, and as you can see, we got the different meter readings. And as you can see, it turned middle gray as well. So this time meter was thinking, aha, this reflects a bright light from the white card, so I need to make it darker. It's too bright, and when it makes it darker, it turns into middle gray again. So from this example, you can see how actually meter, if we can say so, thinks. It calibrates everything to middle gray. If we take a picture of black and white card with the meter readings we took of the 18% gray card under the same lighting conditions, we will get black and white instead of gray. This way we need to be smarter than the meter. For example, if we have a scene with different tonalities from white to black, middle gray, different tones, a meter can do a good job metering this. But for example, if we have a scene where everything is white, like for example a scene in the snow, we need to think that my meter might think that this is too bright and let me make it darker. So you will have to open up few stops to get a true representation of the scene and that white is truly white. Or other way around, if you're taking pictures of something which is really dark, meter might think this is too dark, let him make it brighter, and this wouldn't be a true representation of the scene. Then you will have to close down so your scene will be displayed as it is. You can also try this. You will need a gray 18% gray card like this, which you can get from your local store, local photography store. And you take this card and you place it next to your subject. For example, if flowers are my subject, I place them here so the same light falls on the gray card as it falls on the flowers. Then I zoom in on the gray card with my camera, so I fill up my frame with a gray card. And then I take my meter readings. And then I set my settings, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. And then I back up. And then I take the picture with the same meter readings I took of the gray card. And then you take a picture of the flowers and then you will get a perfect exposure of the flowers. Give it a try. There are a few different types of metering modes, and some cameras could have one or others, or some cameras have all of them. And those are spot metering, partial metering, average metering, matrix or evaluative metering, and center weighted metering. Spot or partial metering lets you to meter the subject in the center of the frame or at selected focus points. Only small area of the frame is metered and the rest of the frame is ignored. This type of metering might be useful for bright backlit scenes, macro photography, or when you take pictures of the moon. In average metering mode, the light information coming from entire scene is used and averaged for final exposure. No weight is given to any portion of the image. Matrix or evaluative metering is one of the most advanced metering modes, offering a good exposure in a lot of situations. So the way it works, the scene is divided into metering zone, which are evaluated individually, and exposure is based on specific algorithm of the camera. So every camera company, they made up those algorithms for the camera, which are big secret, of course, and they usually work pretty well. So this metering I use a lot. Center-weighted metering is one of the most common metering modes implemented in almost every camera. This mode averages the exposure of entire scene but gives extra weight to the center. This metering mode is actually really good for portraits. Some scenes, of course, is easier to meter than others. And some scenes will give you kind of similar results with all of these modes. And some scenes will really give you totally different results with the different modes. So let's take a look at which meter modes are in my camera. It's Nikon D7000, and I will show you how to change them. First of all, to change your metering mode, you will need to set your camera into manual mode, aperture priority, or shutter speed priority. It won't work in auto mode. Then in my camera, to change your metering mode, you can use the button right here. So when you press this button, you will see the metering mode. It shows up on the screen, and then you can scroll it. So here we have spot metering mode, center weighted, and matrix metering mode. Also, you can go into your menu and in the settings where the pencil is, which are custom settings menu, you will see metering, exposure and exposure. See right here. And then you go into metering and exposure, and then you scroll down, there is center weighted area, and then you click, and then you can choose the diameter of center weighted area or average metering. I tested these modes in my camera by taking picture of myself in the black clothes against bright background. I think this way you can see the difference the best. As you can see, with matrix or evaluative metering and center weighted metering, we can see the best balance between me and the background. You can still see some details in the background or more details on my shirt and on me. With the spot metering, as you can see, the background is overexposed because the meter was metering the spot on my shirt, which is black, so meter thought, oh, this scene is dark, let me make it brighter, and this way the meter made me brighter. There is more details in my clothes. My black clothes become kind of grayish and the background become totally overexposed. With average metering, you can see that I am very dark because average metering meters everything in the scene, and the background takes a big part of the scene, and background is bright, so the meter thinks, oh, this scene is too bright, there is too much light, let me close down and add less light to the picture. So this way, that's why you can see a lot of details in the background, and I'm totally silhouetted in this picture. Also, as I showed you, there is 4 center weighted modes in my camera, where the circle, the center, is a different diameter. And as you can see, the smaller is the circle, the brighter I am. The wider is the circle, the more of the background meter can pick up, and that's why the scene gets darker, because it meters more and more of the white background, and it thinks that the scene is brighter, so it tries to make it darker. Here's a few examples. For example, if you are taking picture of some subject against bright background, and you meter the whole scene and took a picture, and your subject is too dark, what you can do is to get closer to your subject, fill up your frame with the subject, meter and set up your exposure, and then step back and take a picture with the settings you set when you got closer to your subject. This way you will make your subject brighter. Here is the opposite example, when you have a bright subject against dark background. As you can see in this picture, the bright subject, which is me, is overexposed because the background was dark and my camera meter thought that, oh, this is too dark, let me make it brighter, and this way it made me too bright. So in this situation, when you come closer and meter just your subject, and then step back and shoot at the settings the meter told you when you got closer, you will get a better exposure. Also, another challenging situation if you have a landscape against bright sky. And sometimes you're taking a picture and your landscape is kind of dark. To make it brighter, you will have to get closer or zoom in on your landscape, and this way and when you back up and shoot at the meter, your landscape will get brighter. But the problem with this is that your sky might get much brighter too, and some details in the sky might blow out, like in this situation. But the good news is that there is a way in post-production to make both a perfect exposure. We can get brighter landscape and also more details in the sky by using special techniques which I will show you in some other tutorials. Let's summarize everything we learned today. Today we were talking about light metering. And there is two types of light metering. One is incident and another one is reflected. Incident one is more accurate because it measures the light which is falling on the subject with the help of handheld meter. So the subject color or brightness or shape doesn't matter. It doesn't influence your meter reading. The other one is reflected metering, which is measuring the light which is reflected off the subject. That's why it's influenced by the subject color, shape, brightness. And that's why sometimes it can be fooled by it and it's not 100% accurate. But when you understand how it works and how your camera thinks, because you measure your reflected light with a built-in camera meter, you will know how to take a better exposure. And you will know in which situation you will need to adjust. You can always start with your starting point, the one which camera shows you, camera meter shows you, and then you can adjust. But in most situations it will work good for you, but there are some situations when it can be fooled. So the more you use your camera, the more you will know how your light meter in the camera acts. Also, there is different modes you can use. Usually the matrix mode works for a lot of situations, but you can try out the other modes as well and see in which situation they work better. So I hope this lesson was helpful for you, and I hope you learned something new today and will help you to take some better pictures. So see you next time.